What if I told you that being too strong can actually ruin a story? Enter Saitama, the Cape Baldy who can obliterate anything with a single punch. At first, it's hilarious. But then, something starts to feel off. No struggle, no real stakes, just a guy waiting for a worthy opponent that never comes. Is One Punch Man secretly its own worst enemy? Let's break it down. Part 1. The all-powerful Saitama. Saitama, the bald-headed, cape-wearing enigma of One Punch Man, is the very definition of overpowered. He doesn't just defeat enemies, he erases them from existence with a single punch. It's a ridiculous concept that flips traditional battle anime on its head. No struggle, no drawn-out power-ups, no desperate last-minute transformations. Just a bored man punching things into oblivion. At first glance, this premise is genius. One Punch Man started as a parody of shonen battle tropes, mocking the endless cycle of training arcs and increasingly absurd power scaling. While Goku from Dragon Ball needs entire sagas to push his limits, Saitama already stands at the finish line, yawning. Even powerful foes like Deep Sea King Carnage Kabuto and Jiryugen barely last more than a few seconds. It's funny, it's stylish, and the animation from Madhouse, Season 1 and JC Staff, Season 2, makes these moments visually stunning. But here's the issue. One Punch Man was never meant to be just a parody. Beneath the comedy, it tries to tell a compelling story, and that's where Saitama's overwhelming strength becomes more of a hindrance than a creative asset. When a protagonist is this powerful, tension evaporates. Every fight has the same outcome. No matter how threatening the villain, no matter how terrible the situation, there's no real question of if Saitama will win, only when he decides to throw a punch. And when a story's main character never faces a true challenge, it's hard to stay emotionally invested. That's the dilemma with One Punch Man. The very thing that makes Saitama fun also makes him kinda boring. Part 2. Lack of character development. In the world of anime, growth is everything. The most iconic protagonists aren't defined by their power, but by their struggles. Take Naruto Uzumaki from Naruto. He starts as an outcast, despised, and ridiculed, yet through sheer determination he grows into a Hokage who earns the world's respect. His journey, filled with failures, training, and personal losses, makes his triumphs satisfying. Or look at Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan. His transformation from a reckless, revenge-driven soldier to a morally complex revolutionary is one of the most engaging character arcs in modern anime. His choices have weight, and his growth feels organic. But with Saitama, there is no struggle. He has no rivals to surpass, no inner demons to conquer, no personal stakes that force him to evolve. His only real problem is boredom, and while it's a novel concept, it's not enough to sustain deep character development. Even his existential crisis, his frustration at not feeling challenged, is treated more as a running joke than a meaningful arc. This stagnation makes it difficult to connect with him on an emotional level. We don't cheer for his victories because they don't feel earned. There's no effort, no sacrifice, no weight behind them. He remains the same character from Episode 1, untouched by the events around him. And in a medium where change and growth define great storytelling, that's a major flaw. Part 3. Supporting characters steal the show. Ironically, One Punch Man thrives not because of Saitama, but because of everyone around him. Characters like Genos, Bang, Tatsumaki, King, and Garu bring depth and stakes that Saitama simply can't. Genos' obsession with revenge and his struggle to surpass his limits make him a compelling figure. Bang's regret over his fallen disciple, Garu's journey as an anti-hero, and Tatsumaki's inner conflicts add real emotional weight to the series. In fact, many of the most engaging fights in One Punch Man don't even involve Saitama. Watching Garu push himself to the brink, struggling against S-class heroes, is genuinely exciting. When Genos squares off against an overwhelming foe, we're invested because he can lose. There's real tension, real consequences. But the moment Saitama enters the scene, the tension dies. The villain's threat level no longer matters because the outcome is guaranteed. And that's a huge storytelling issue. The protagonist should be the emotional core of the series, Yet in One Punch Man, Saitama often feels more like a punchline than a main character. Saitama stays the same, and when the side characters become more interesting than the protagonist, you know there's an issue. Part 4. Saitama's Short-Ended Battles. Remember the fight against Lord Boros? That was arguably the most exciting battle in the series. Boros was the first villain who could somewhat keep up with Saitama, forcing him to use his serious series attacks. For a brief moment, we saw what a true fight for Saitama could look like, intense, beautifully animated, and almost evenly matched. But that's an exception. The rest of Saitama's fights are over before they even begin. Compare that to Hunter x Hunter's Meruem vs. Netero fight. That battle wasn't just about power levels. It was a strategic war between two titanic forces filled with psychological warfare and desperation. Or look at Demon Slayer's Tanjiro versus Daki and Jotaro. Every cut, every dodge, every injury matters because victory isn't guaranteed. With Saitama, there's no struggle, no strategy, no build-up, just a punch and a resolution. And that's how it always is. The setup is epic, the enemy looks unstoppable, and then, bam, one punch, end of fight. That formula works in a gag anime like Gintama when played for comedy, but when Saitama tries to be serious, it starts to fall apart. And the more this happens, the more predictable it gets. Instead of being excited for a new villain, we're just waiting for the inevitable punchline. What starts as satire eventually becomes repetitive. Part 5. Tension and Stakes in Storytelling. Tension and stakes serve as the lifeblood of any compelling narrative. They create anticipation, uncertainty, and emotional investment, elements that keep audiences glued to their screens. In action-heavy series, the protagonist's journey is often defined by escalating challenges, each pushing them further to their limits. My Hero Academia exemplifies this masterfully through Izuku Midoriya's relentless struggle. From a powerless boy idolizing All Might to an aspiring hero inheriting One for All, Deka's journey is riddled with hardships. Every battle tests not only his strength but his resolve, and the looming danger of failure makes each moment resonate. Now, contrast this with One Punch Man. The series intentionally subverts traditional storytelling by eliminating tension at its core. Saitama's overwhelming strength removes any sense of struggle, making his battles feel more like formalities than true conflicts. No matter how monstrous or apocalyptic a villain appears, the outcome is predetermined. A single punch, and it's over. While this subversion is amusing at first, it gradually undermines emotional investment. Why should we worry when we already know how the fight will end? This predictability robs the audience of any genuine suspense, making each battle more of a spectacle than a gripping clash of wills. Part 6. Comparison with other anime. When examining One Punch Man in the broader landscape of anime, the difference in approach becomes even clearer. Take Dragon Ball Z, for example. While Goku is undeniably overpowered in many instances, his battles are still fueled by struggle. He isn't always the strongest, he gets beaten, he trains, and he pushes beyond his limits. Frieza, Cell, Majin Buu. Each antagonist presents a threat that forces Goku to evolve. The legendary Super Saiyan transformation against Frieza wasn't just a power-up, it was a moment built on the weight of loss, rage, and necessity. Now let's look at Mob Psycho 100, which interestingly comes from the same creator as One Punch Man. Mob, much like Saitama, possesses overwhelming strength. But Mob Psycho 100 takes a drastically different approach. Mob's journey isn't about proving his strength, but understanding himself. His battles aren't just about physical domination, they're deeply tied to his emotional and psychological growth. His struggles with identity, relationships, and self-acceptance make his story resonate on a far deeper level. When he faces enemies like Mogami or Toichiro Suzuki, the fights aren't just about explosions and psychic duels. They reflect Mob's internal battles, making them far more impactful. This is where One Punch Man finds itself at a crossroads. While its satire is undeniably sharp, its reliance on Saitama's invincibility limits its emotional depth. Other anime, with overpowered protagonists, be it Dragon Ball Z or Mob Psycho 100, ensure their characters face meaningful struggles, whether physical, emotional, or philosophical. One Punch Man, by design, resists this, leaving its narrative somewhat hollow beneath the surface. He doesn't change, doesn't struggle, and doesn't grow. And that's why he can feel stale compared to other overpowered characters. Part 7, Balancing Humor and Depth. There's no denying that One Punch Man is an expertly crafted comedy. Its exaggerated action sequences, absurd villains, and sharp writing make it a joy to watch. But humor alone cannot sustain a long-running series. Look at Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. It effortlessly balances humor, action, and emotional weight. The comedic moments, like Ed's height complex or the antics of Major Armstrong, add levity, but they never undermine the story's gravity. When the series demands emotional investment, it delivers. The weight of sacrifice, loss, and the consequences of alchemy ensure that every conflict feels significant. One Punch Man, however, leans so heavily on its comedic premise that it sometimes sidelines opportunities for deeper storytelling. Season 2 attempted to introduce a more serious narrative through Garu's arc, offering a perspective on strength and heroism that contrasted with Saitama's nonchalant attitude. However, because Saitama remains unaffected by any real threats, the overarching tension never fully materializes. This is where One Punch Man could expand. Instead of solely relying on its comedic foundation, the series could delve into the emotional and psychological aspects of Saitama's existence. What does it truly mean to be the strongest? How does invincibility affect one's sense of purpose? These are questions worth exploring, ones that could add new dimensions to Saitama's character without undermining the series' satirical edge.
腹減った。飯だ飯。うどん食いに行こうぜ。強くなるためなら。
Part 8, Potential for Growth. Despite its structural limitations, One Punch Man is far from a lost cause. The series possesses an immense foundation for growth, one that, if handled correctly, could transform it into a more well-rounded anime experience. The manga has already begun laying the groundwork for a broader narrative, introducing more formidable threats and expanding on the Hero Association's inner workings. But there are even more intriguing possibilities that could be explored. But where does Saitama fit in all this? That remains the biggest challenge. If he remains an unchanging force, the story risks stagnation. But if the series takes the bold step of evolving his character, whether through emotional struggles, philosophical dilemmas, or even the introduction of a true rival, it could redefine itself. There is room to explore his backstory, his psyche, and the meaning behind his strength. What if Saitama began to question his role? What if he found something he couldn't simply punch away? That, more than any overpowered fight scene, could inject the series with newfound depth. For now, One Punch Man remains an entertaining but narratively limited experience. Whether it can grow beyond its initial premise is still uncertain, but the potential is undeniable. Saitama's overwhelming power makes for some incredible fights, but does it hold One Punch Man back from being truly great? The debate rages on. What do you think? Is Saitama's strength a brilliant subversion or a narrative dead end? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more anime deep analysis. See you in the next one. 連続普通のパンチ